Statistically speaking, my freshman year was a bit of a tragedy, but that is only one side of the game. The other side would be results, and I like to focus on those instead, like our continued streak in the battle for the Axe, or our first bowl win since 2009 against Miami. All of those positive has led us here to my sophomore year, where I was prepared to lead my team to a championship. In week 1, we traveled to Martin Stadium to take on the Washington State Cougars, and I was reminded early on of my defense's shortcomings. I know I needed to focus on the offensive side of the ball and not so much the defense, but it was incredibly frustrating to always play from behind. But that didn't stop me from marching down the field before taking this one in for the tying score. I had some personal goals I wanted to achieve this year, one of which is being more patient in the pocket. I felt last year I forced way too many balls and it resulted in a lot of unnecessary turnovers, some of which being game ending. After using that method, we moved down the field quickly, and on the second and goal we ran the read, where I would get stuffed and I wasn't getting up. I wouldn't see the field again until the beginning of the third, where we were down 2 possessions. And using my steady pace wins the race method, I was able to effectively move us down the field before finding Bo Anderson in the end zone for a little mid-third quarter magic, where we'd be heading into the fourth, only down by 7. At the beginning of the fourth, we were able to drive down the field before handing it off to Casey Williams for the tying score, but that would only last moments, as Washington State would be able to drive down the field and regain the lead with a field goal. With just about a minute left in the game, I was determined to lead this team down the field for victory. I was able to find Bo Callahan up the middle for a massive gain, but it would only result in a field goal, and we were heading to overtime. Washington State struck first, and I answered back to go into second overtime, where I found Eric White on the first play for the go-ahead score. All of that was for nothing, as Washington State continued to score, and so did we. We were in an old-fashioned overtime shootout, and neither of us was willing to break. At the beginning of the fourth, I was able to locate Chad Edwards for yet another touchdown, but we failed the 2-point conversion, and I was left on the sidelines feeling sick as I watched my defense choke this one away, and we fell to Washington State 57-55 in 4 overtimes. The next week, we hosted FCS Midwest, and I think everyone was ready to bounce back after that soul-crushing overtime defeat to Washington State. After a turnover and great field position, we were to strike quickly, only to get the ball back a few minutes later to find blown coverages and wide-open wide receivers. I don't think FCS's defense was ready for the caliber of offense I brought to the table, as we were able to move the ball down the field almost effortlessly. They received a lot of money to come here and play us, but I'm not even sure if the money was even worth it, as they were getting embarrassed live on national TV. At the beginning of the second, we were in for our third score of the day, and I was feeling really good as I was able to put the ball to where only my wide receivers would be able to catch it. With the lack of pressure, I was feeling comfortable being able to squeeze my balls into the smallest windows possible, and sitting back and relaxing as I found wide open wide receivers down the field. And just before half, I noticed they left Eric White wide open outside the numbers for my 5th passing touchdown of the day, and the rest was history as we were able to fly by FCS Midwest by 35 points. At practice this week, something felt off. It felt like everyone was here just because they had to be, not to prepare for the upcoming week. It seemed like every play I was under pressure, and when I was able to get the ball out, the wide receivers refused to catch the ball. I was getting absolutely steamrolled as my linemen refused to block for me, and I was worried that it was going to translate into next week's game. We were hosting Bowling Green this week, and the game started off exactly how practice ended, with drop passes. But with the help of this absolute money ball by me to Eric White outside the numbers, we were able to get into the red zone. But on the next play, I would make a terrible read
where he threads the needle
for our first turnover of the day. That is not how I wanted to start my day, so as I took a verbal beating from my head coach on the sidelines, I regrouped and figured if I could lead my team down the field for our first score of the day, we can get this ball rolling and we can run away with this game. And that is exactly what happened as I found a wide open Casey Williams for our first score of the day. We missed the field goal, but after this next play, I didn't seem to mind. The defender played under, and I was able to find Eric White, who was able to take it all the way down the field to the house. Everything was playing out like I thought it would after my sideline epiphany, as the defense was having a difficult time guarding Eric White, which allowed us to move down the field, where I found Chad Edwards to go up 20 points going into the half. Nothing changed after half. We were working as a well-oiled machine as I maliciously moved this team up and down each side of the field with ease. And on this 3rd and 1, I was able to find Chad Edwards in the back of the end zone as we ran away with this game. We were officially on a 2-game win streak heading into next week's big game. I won player of the game as we downed Bowling Green 34-7. We were hosting number 5 Ohio State this week, and just like last year, I was hungry for the upset. I knew that if we would be on a 3-game winning streak, along with upsetting the number 5 team in the country, we would finally be ranked this season. So I slowly picked apart the defense, moving us down the field, And on this 4th and 3 play, they locked up all my wide receivers, and I was set to scramble. I was able to evade the defenders as I rushed down the side of the field for a 16-yard gain. But I guess that 16-yard rush tired my little body out, because on this read option on the very next play, I would take a light hit that resulted in me getting injured. We were able to score on that drive that I got injured. And when I came back in the game halfway through the second quarter, we were only down 14-7, which was relieving because I was ready to serve up something fierce. Everything would work itself out, as my defense would bail me out this time, and I was set with 2 minutes left on the clock to drive down the field and tie this game up before half. And that is exactly what happened as we moved down the field before giving the ball off to Casey Williams for a 2-yard rushing touchdown. Ohio State would go on to make 2 mistakes, turning the ball over and then allowing a wide open Eric White for a 21-14 lead at half. A little bit into the fourth, we had the lead and all the momentum, and I was prepared to make this the final drive of the game. They caught us on third down multiple times, but I converted on every single one of them. And after Ohio State burned through all their timeouts, I handed it off to Casey Williams for one final touchdown, as we were able to down number 5 Ohio State by 17. We traveled to Indiana this week, and just like I thought, after beating Ohio State, we were now ranked. And this drive could not have started out any better, even though I think Terrence Curry is now in a wheelchair, but that doesn't matter because it's for the greater good. After this read option, I was able to squeeze my way down to the 2-yard line where we set out an outside toss to Jason Thomas, who took it in for the tying score. We got the ball back in the middle of the second, where we were down by 3, but I wasn't too worried because I knew the Indiana defenders couldn't cover their own head with a hat, which allowed me to be more comfortable in the pocket and pick apart this defense and be able to find Bo Calhoun for this 11-yard touchdown. At the beginning of the third, I was able to find Chad Edwards, where I heard him scream all the way over here, "Get your weight up, little boy," as he shed the tackle and took this one all the way down the field to the house. At the beginning of the fourth, we were up 24-10. And Indiana fans knew their day was over with as soon as I connected with JT Wallace to help set up this 31-10 lead. On the next drive, I stuck a fork in this defense as they allowed a literal man-child to scramble for a 20-yard touchdown as we absolutely decimated Indiana en route for our 4th victory in a row. This week, we were at home taking on number 2 Michigan in this very crucial Big Ten showdown, and the game could not start out any better as I was able to scramble out of the pocket for this 25-yard gain where I got right in the sideline's face to let them know that I was going to be there all day. This game was especially crucial because we were both leading our respected conferences, but unfortunately the drive fizzled out where we had to settle for a field goal. At the beginning of the second, we were down 7-3, but I wasn't going to let it faze me as I needed to prove to myself and everyone that's ever doubted me that I was ready for this level of competition. So I did what I did best, and I performed well under pressure as I moved us down the field before on this 3rd and goal I would roll out of the pocket and find Chad Edwards on the back of the end zone for the lead. Michigan would go on to score right before half, leaving us trailing halfway through the 3rd quarter. But that is alright, because I was once described as being cooler than cool, I was ice cold. As I curved this bullet around the defenses like a bullet from the movie Wanted, I moved us right back down the field before finding Casey Williams for the 5th lead change of the day. With 2 minutes left in the game, we were down by 11, and I was set for some in-game magic, but that was before I got absolutely bamboozled setting up this 3rd and 31, where I took the snap, rolled out of the pocket, and sent up a prayer to Chad Edwards before being folded like laundry, but he let it bounce right off of his hands. And to make things worse, I got injured, which ended my day as we fell to Michigan 28-17. We were playing Illinois this week, and I started the game off by showing this dude who his daddy was before getting quickly tackled. But I think my offensive line took offense to that as they would all stop blocking on this play and allowed me to get creamed on by 4 big defensive linemen. And then on the next play where my left guard missed his tackle, allowing me to get creamed on again. Late in the first quarter, we were down by 7, and I knew this stadium and this team needed a spark, so I sent up this 50-50 ball to Chad Edwards, who was able to come down with it before being stuck on this 3rd and 2 at the beginning of the second, where I was able to scramble out of the pocket, find Bo Calhoun to set up 1st and goal for a Casey Williams tying score. Wisconsin hasn't won a Big Ten championship since 2004, and I really wanted to be that guy that brought that title back home. Despite our loss to Michigan last week, we are still sat at the top of the Big Ten East, and I knew that if we could just somehow win out for the remainder of the season, we'd be able to challenge them again at the conference championship. The road to the conference championship started with us taking the lead before half, but on this 3rd and 5 early on the 3rd, I was scrambling out of the pocket before getting stood up and sat back down where I would lose the ball and receive my typical game day injury. For whatever reason, coach sent me back out to kneel the ball once as the time expired and we were able to get past Illinois 35-28. In the next game, we traveled to Beaver Stadium to take on Penn State, and I vividly remember them embarrassing me in the snowstorm last year. so I was set for some revenge. But I was fighting a different kind of battle this week against my own wide receivers, as they were having trouble catching the common cold. But somehow I was still able to lead us down the field, where on the 2nd and 13 I would find Eric White open in the end zone to cut the lead to 10. During halftime, I got with all my wide receivers and I told them they needed to get together to build a bridge to get over all their issues. And I guess my motivational speech got to all of them as we came out in the third, playing like a whole different team. And at the end of the third, we got the ball back with really good field positioning, where on the 2nd and 4th, I was able to scramble out of the pocket for a small 6-yard gain, and just a few plays later, I was able to get the defense to bite on this play action pass where I would find a wide open Chad Edwards for the lead. Sadly, we were down by 3, and in this situation, Bo did not know best as I watched the ball bounce off of both his hands for the most unluckiest pick of my career as we fell to Penn State 24-21. We were traveling to Iowa this week, and I think losing out on the ability to control our path to the Big Ten Championship made everyone play sour, because neither side of the ball showed up today, as we had no offense in the first, and although we were able to get into the end zone, it didn't last long, as Iowa got into the end zone 2 more times before we would even see their side of the field. I was getting tired of everyone's poor attitude and inability to bounce back after a loss. It seemed like we would just lose one game, and the next week would reflect their poor attitudes. We were able to move the ball from time to time, but it always seems like it would fizzle out right on the cuffs of field goal range, and we'd either have to punt or we would miss the kick. And this one play summed up my entire day, as the defender got past the lineman and sacked and injured me, and we fell to Iowa 35-14. I got with Coach Alvarez this week, and he approved 2-a-days. I told everyone on the field today that we were going to be here every day, twice a day, even on the weekends, until we started playing like we wanted to be here. And I'm not quite sure if it was out of spite or even obligation, but we started working as a team. My wide receivers were catching all the passes I was throwing at them, and all my blockers were actually doing their job protecting me. It was good to see that we were finally working as a team, and I like to imagine that we are ready for next week's game. We hosted New Mexico this week, and my first snow game of the season. I'm glad that we ran so many practices over the last week in preparation for this game, because from early on, you could tell that my teammates could not keep their hands off my balls. My receivers were holding on to everything I threw at them, no matter if they were wide open or if it was a contested catch. And I think it was frustrating New Mexico's defense, because on this 3rd and 3, I was scrambling in for a touchdown where I felt that I got contacted late. But I got my revenge after just 30 seconds later they turned over the ball, and I found Eric White for this massive gain, before a few plays later, on 2nd and 5, I was able to find Chad Edwards in the back of the end zone. We were steamrolling New Mexico's defense this week, and after the last couple weeks, it was finally nice to get back in the win column. It was sad that we're going to miss out on the Big Ten Championship this year, but my focus swapped from bringing home a title to breaking as many records as I could so that I could cement my legacy. New Mexico would put up some garbage time touchdowns to make the score look a lot closer than it actually was, but make no mistake, we put up 42 points on the Aggies as we demolished them heading into our big rivalry game next week. We were hosting Minnesota this week in the Battle for the Axe, where last year we were able to win in a landslide victory, stretching our current win streak to 10 straight years. But Minnesota was showing that they really wanted to break that cycle and bring home that trophy, as we were down 7 early on in the second quarter. But I knew if I continued to play the short game and chip away at the field, it would eventually allow me to bomb them over the top just like this when I found Eric White on this 36-yard touchdown. Minnesota was playing like they really wanted to bring that trophy home this year, as we were down 3 points with just a minute left in the half. We had no timeouts left, but I was able to effectively move the ball down the field before finding a wide open Bo Calhoun for the lead going into half. After gaining the lead right before half, this game seemed like it slowed down and got a lot easier to move the ball down the field. I was having the best rushing game of my career, as I was running all over this defense. Literally. Later on, during the same drive, we were just outside the red zone, where I was able to escape the pocket and take this one down the field. But I would run out of bounds thinking I was going to get tackled when I could have gotten in, but that's okay because on the very next play, I took the read option in, and that was enough to get the victory over Minnesota. For the second straight year, I was able to bring home the axe to my mom, and I'm not going to lie, it felt pretty good to see the sorrow in Minnesota's eyes as I would go on to win the player of the game, and me and the team would celebrate huge that night after the victory. In the final game of the season, we traveled to Purdue in what would be my second snow game of the season. And realistically, even though I do not like losing, we were already bowl eligible, so I didn't exactly care about the outcome of this game, as I knew it would not change anything moving forward. With the current weather conditions, it made this game a little bit more of a defensive battle than an offensive battle, But it also gave Purdue a false sense of hope, as they actually thought they had a chance in this game. With my current mindset, I was able to stay calm in the pocket as I found Chad Edwards for my first touchdown of the game. And despite the scoreboard being a lot closer than it should be, I had zero issues moving the ball down the field when I wanted to, as we would take a 21-7 lead going into the fourth quarter. This game felt pretty easy for the most part, as we were in the lead for a majority of the game, which took all the pressure off of our backs to produce scoring drives. And on this 3rd and goal, I was able to find Chad Edwards for my 3rd passing touchdown of the day as we got past the Boilermakers 28-14. This year, we were taking on number 12 South Carolina in the Outback Bowl, and this game couldn't have started out any better as I got the blocks that I needed on this read option to be able to take this ball 70 yards down the field for the longest rushing touchdown of my career. But South Carolina showed me that they were game and that they really wanted to win this week, as they took a 14-7 lead a little bit into the second quarter. But so did I. I wanted to bring back my 2nd straight championship to this campus, so I knew that it was crucial for me to move down this field and tie up this game. After converting on multiple 3rd downs, I set up this 3rd and 8 where I was able to find JT Wallace for the tying score, where I would go on to break my first school record tossing for my 32nd touchdown. Unfortunately, things went south after this as we went into the fourth quarter down by 21. Everyone was looking at me as the leader of this team, so I had to show this defense that I had the juice as I found a wide open Eric White down the field to set up this 2nd and goal 50-50 toss over to Chad Edwards to bring us within 2 possessions. The defense would go on to score a crucial turnover halfway through the fourth quarter, and our comeback story was set to continue, where I started the drive off with this massive rushing gain, before later on in the drive, on a 2nd and 10, I would find a wide open Bo Calhoun up the middle to set us up. But on this 3rd and 17, I would make a terrible mistake floating this ball into triple coverage where I threw the game-ending pick. As the whole team was devastated by this loss, we would fall to South Carolina 35-21 and we were going home as losers, and I was ready to get to my junior year.